While we are in preparation stage, one thing to call out, firstly, thank you so much for everybody who attended, who is attending. Really appreciate your interest in learning more. I'm very conscious that Employment Hero is predominantly, like we are an HR, payroll and benefits platform that specializes on helping employers and employee engagement. And we work closely with a number of superannuation funds. I suppose the content for today is mostly focused on those who do work within a superannuation fund rather than those who might be looking at Employment Hero as their HR platform. Not to say that you're not welcome, of course you are, and very, very lovely to have you along, but just thought I'd call that out at the very beginning, that if you're a business owner or a payroll officer looking at Employment Hero and keen to learn more about the platform, please do just send us a note after this. We'll send you an email and we'll happily get one of the customer service or sales teams to reach out and talk through the platform. Today is really just focusing on expanding some new ways that we might be able to work closer with some superannuation funds. All right, so we're 3 past. We'll get started. By way of introduction, my name is Jaramis. I'm a partnership manager at Employment Hero. My role is predominantly looking after the relationships that we have with our superannuation fund providers, and looking at new and interesting ways that we can actually help our users, the employees of the platform, get access and value out of their superannuation arrangements. So today is a real exploratory type webinar. We bit of a greenfields thinking, so some untested ideas, but we're having a conversation internally about reward and recognition programs. So the conversation we were having is employers generally get a lot of success out of engaging their employees with reward and recognition programs. It's no surprise, it's been around for a while. We see a lot of fantastic engagement and the flow-on benefits through our platform. So we know that there's a lot of value in reward and recognition programs. So we sort of took that thinking internally and challenged ourselves with a whiteboard, Stephen and I, one day, and we thought, okay, is there anything here that we might be able to think about from a superannuation perspective, as an employer, if you put together frameworks that create great engagement from your employees, how might a superannuation fund actually lift up that thinking and plot that into and create positive engagement with your members. So that's the, I guess, embryo idea of where we started today, and something we'll be delighted to share more on. Certainly don't want this to be a session where we're just talking at you for the whole time. So please do ask questions in the chat. We'll keep an eye on it throughout. Otherwise, at the end of the session, we will share the recording from today. And as part of that, you'll have our contact details. Please do reach out with any questions that you've got. I'm really happy to expand out from here. So with that, just a little bit of a disclaimer. It's the usual sort of thing that you should expect. I think the main thing here is looking at reward and recognition is a totally new area. We just want to stress the importance that for every superannuation fund or every arrangement, there are specifics to be considered. And today is really just designed to open up some thinking and some ideas. It's not designed to be a framework or a structure that's going to result in something that you can rubber stamp and take into your business tomorrow. This is just an exploratory idea. So please do reach out if you have any questions. A bit of background. So my name is Ray. I've been with Employment Hero for, over 3 years now. It's probably been the fastest 3 years of my life. 10 years in financial services, predominantly in financial advice, and came into Employment Hero because financial advice is one of those things that's very hard to scale, and it can often be quite expensive, which makes it inaccessible. So you've got a bit of an engagement problem, I suppose, around financial advice. And then on the other side, you've got tech platforms or SaaS platforms that are really fantastic at providing cost-efficient, powerful, scalable ways of helping a lot of people and providing brilliant outcomes. And part of my mandate is to really put that thinking together and to say, okay, how do we provide scalable solutions that can address our audience and rethink some of these traditional engagement models? With that, we also have Stephen Yoon. Stephen's a senior product manager at Employment Hero. He has one of the busiest diaries in the Employment Hero organization. So absolutely delighted to have some of his time today. Very generous, especially during travel. Stephen, might ask you to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Ray. Yeah, really excited to be here. My name's Stephen. Background actually was in marketing. So really looking at that growth space. Jumped into consulting. Was in consulting for a number of years, predominantly focused on financial services. So working with a lot of banks and superannuation funds at the time there. And left to kind of join the product world. Just felt like, there's a lot of innovation happening in that space, which is really, really cool. I've been with Employment Hero for about 2 years now, and my remit, so Employment Hero is a HR, payroll, and benefits company. I predominantly head up the benefits area. So within benefits, we also cover superannuation. We have a financial wellbeing and fintech offering that we've got, as well as your core employee benefits. So yeah, really excited to be here. And as Ray mentioned, we've got a pretty interesting topic today. So yeah, happy to dive in.
As a starting point, Stephen, so financial services, are traditionally, really, really good at, the core functions of what financial services are, which is understanding the intricacies of financial products and communicating those tools and services to individuals to obviously help people with their financial position. But product and tech is huge, right? And I think now more than ever, funds or financial services providers are starting to think of themselves as organizations that straddle both worlds, from being a financial services provider to almost kind of being like a tech business as well, but operating in a financial services industry. So with that in mind, one thing I'd be really keen to get your initial thoughts on is, from a product perspective, like marketing and product, what would you say is kind of like a product-led approach to problem solving, or how do you sort of think about it from a product side of things?
I mean, naturally, just through the product role, you have to wear a lot of hats. So you're balancing the customer. You always hear about product managers being the voice of the customer. You're balancing technology constraints. You're balancing the business side, so the commercial aspect, as well as especially in the financial services space, any legal risk and compliance. So you're kind of balancing all of that. A really product-led approach. At Employment Hero, we always talk about making an impact, and there's many ways to tackle problems. I think one thing that we do quite well is just really thinking about like what's going to make a 10x impact as opposed to an incremental impact. You may have heard that saying before, but you can spend a lot of time to make small increments, or you could really think about a problem really deeply and think about fundamentally what are the core needs of a customer, or what are the first principles of a particular problem, and just think about how that can be applied in a 10x fashion. And one of the things, and we'll sort of touch on that sort of process today actually, is what are some mega trends that are happening out there in the world, and how can you apply that to your particular problem to really drive that innovation? So yeah, that's something I like to do, and I think we've applied that thinking with this today, just applying broader megatrends. So yeah,
fantastic. Me being predominantly financial services background, I have to say, Stephen, working closely with yourself and just having this totally different way of thinking about, like, let's not just solve one problem, but figure out a way to solve 10, 100, 200 problems with this. Like, it's just a different way of thinking, and something I've really enjoyed. Megatrends we certainly will get into as part of today, but interested in your kind of thoughts though. What would you say is kind of exciting, some tech trends that you're seeing, and some stuff that you think is going to be pretty important in the coming years?
Two things that come to mind. Financial services space, you hear a lot about bundling and unbundling of services. So there was a big trend to unbundle major services within a financial services organization. So really splitting up core capabilities. And often that meant that you'd have a separate app for investments, you'd have a separate app for retail banking, you'd have a separate app for wealth management. But I think what you're seeing right now is actually this trend of bundling everything back together. So you are seeing the likes of super apps around the world. I think Asia's done a phenomenal job bundling services together. So you've got your Ubers, your Gojeks in Asia. So there's this actual trend I'm seeing of bundling things back up, and I think the Western countries are actually scrambling to kind of catch up with that. So that's one thing that's quite interesting. The other thing is, it's the hot topic right now, but AI. I think AI is going to be an absolute game changer in the tech space. It's just going to create so many efficiencies, and we're at the surface of that. So really excited to see what happens in the AI space.
Awesome. Thank you, mate. So before we get into the content for today, a little bit about Employment Hero for those who are new to us, and certainly thank you for your interest. So Employment Hero's purpose is to make employment easier and more valuable for everybody. What we mean by that is we started predominantly thinking about employment and how we make life easier for business owners, predominantly small to medium business owners who really struggle sometimes to create efficiencies and scale in their processes. So creating a digital employment workflow that makes it really easy and seamless to be a compliant small business owner. In more recent years, we've matured in our thinking there to expand that from business owners to looking at the employees as individuals, and how do we make employment more valuable for an individual who's employed through our platform. And through that, that's part of what certainly Stephen's drive is with our fintech offering, and expanding out those services to the individuals. So sort of transforming that side to be not only just business owners, but through to individuals as well. Superannuation, of course, sits on both sides of that. A little bit about Employment Heroes. We have been around for a little while. We grow quite quickly, which we're very, very proud of. But a little bit about our size. We've got about 1 million employees in the platform who are actively employed, predominantly within Australia, though we are global. Around 200,000 organizations who use Employment Hero as their HR, payroll and benefits platform. We have thousands of people coming in every month who are starting a new role with an employer, and there's certainly a large sum, billions of dollars of payroll getting processed annually. So in terms of the ecosystem of the Employment Hero platform, there's certainly a lot there. And if you can think from a superannuation perspective, there is just so many different stages throughout each life cycle as a business owner or as an individual, where we might start looking at embedding services at a time that makes sense on platforms that these members are already using to help increase the awareness and engagement of what's available to them. All right, so a little bit around the mega trends, I suppose, on where we're seeing things. So we asked ourselves, what's the state of the industry, and where do we think we can add value as at today? A couple of things in terms of the state of play. So certainly some key topics that I'm hearing from the industry at different conferences and events and these types of things. Member engagement. Member engagement is enormous, and we know that funds are under increasingly amount of pressure to engage their members in new ways and challenge themselves to think slightly differently about what member engagement looks like. Certainly on the next side is around, it is difficult and harder to differentiate yourself as a superannuation provider. We've seen the trend of my superannuation accounts, and we're seeing the performance testing, which is getting expanded out more and more, which means that it can be quite difficult to differentiate yourself. Or if you are going to differentiate yourself through like an ESG type program or something that is a specific band, you merge yourself away from the crowd. And what that means is that there's a little bit of a risk, right? Like if everybody's following a similar sort of trend and mergers and acquisitions, then you're putting yourself out on that. So there's a little bit of a risk there, and it is definitely harder to differentiate. Very finally, lack of data. And I think a key problem there is often super is out of sight, out of mind, is as part of your daily working habits as an employee. While superannuation is dovetailing beautifully into a lot of key parts of employment, it doesn't really sit as part of your daily habits unless you're checking your account balance every single day. It's not often that individuals think about what they do in their day and how their superannuation fund might be able to help. So then we challenge ourselves to say, okay, if they're the 3 trends that we're looking at for today, how might we help super funds have happier, more engaged members who retain their current account? And what we mean by that is that because they're delighted with the services that they're providing and they're getting a lot of value, that they're much more likely to stay around throughout their employment lifecycle and through to retirement. Then moving into proactively retaining and engaging existing members and acquiring new members as well. So how might we look at embedding services that deliver both of those? And then very finally, around the lack of data is looking at that trend towards digital transformation. So leveraging a digital first approach to scale and growth, ultimately to help increase member account balances, because individuals are understanding the power and benefits of investing for their long-term financial future. Stephen, as part of that, were there any comments that you had on these trends?
No, nothing more to what you've added. Before I was speaking about, what are the mega trends to really get to like the root issues you're trying to solve. I think where we've landed is, how do we help super funds acquire customers? How do we help super funds increase the average member balances? And then how do we help super funds really retain those customers that they've been working so hard to keep and grow the balances with? So yeah, they're the sort of three areas that we've really focused on. So you hopefully see that thread go throughout this webinar.
Fantastic. So as a starting point, our process is really to look at what traditional approaches have been. So how might super funds tackle engagement or growth problems to begin? And the industry has traditionally had kind of a two-tiered approach. One is like an employer-led approach, and then the other is more of a direct-led approach. That's predominantly around growth and how you acquire and attract new members. But when it comes to engagement, as we see it, there's only really so many channels that are available to superannuation funds. You've got email campaigns that you can send to your members. You've got social media advertising that you can do. Certainly text messages is another form of being able to try and get in front of your members and make them aware of value generating things that are available to them. Superannuation funds as well have fantastic apps that are available and tools and engagement. So you might try and trigger some engagement through there. But today we're looking at that bottom one, which is partnered content, i.e. how can a superannuation fund through a strategic partnership open up engagement in new ways that might not have been traditionally available to them. And that's what we're thinking about. So as a starting point, today we're talking about reward and recognition programs and how superannuation funds may be able to repurpose those frameworks and apply them to employee engagement. And as part of that, we wanted to see what other funds might be doing or what might exist in the industry today. And we have a little bit of a case in point or a bit of a case study. Here we've got a program where members are able to actually link their frequent flyer program to their superannuation account. And what that means is that as a member of the superannuation funds, you actually earn points by making concessional or non-concessional contributions to the fund. It means that the provider can actually link parallel services that members are already familiar with. So as a fund, there's only so many services that you can offer that make sense. But when you've got a parallel service, there's a whole new church of offerings that can sort of sit next to each other and open up that spectrum of engagement. And then we believe there's different ways that you could think about this to surprise and delight your members by saying thank you to members who complete other value generating activities, such as attending educational webinars or completing a binding death benefit nomination. That was one that I'd put in because I know it was a big bugbear as a financial advisor. There wasn't, people didn't often think about it, but it's certainly important when an event happens. So I appreciate the importance there. The results of having as a superannuation fund partnering with an airline points program means that you deliver value beyond traditional super specific channels. It gives members a genuinely unique member experience that differentiate you as a provider. So again, harder to differentiate. It might be harder to differentiate as a super fund, but with a strategic partnership, you expand out your differentiation and it's a unique reason why members might stay with you. And it could be extended to compelling value generating milestones throughout the member lifecycle, which we'll talk about. Stephen, I know this was like a real interesting case in point for yourself. Are there any comments that you had on this?
The comment really is this example was really what spurred a lot of the thinking. We have seen this program out in the market and it's been out there for a few years now. So it's obviously had some success, you would think, otherwise they would have removed the program. So yeah, we looked at this as a real case study to go, well, what can we do? What can we do in this space that could mimic this, which we'll touch on.
Awesome. So again, the extending on that, we saw programs like that out there in the real world. And as an HR platform, we're really good at, and we know reward and recognition programs and employee engagement. That's a key piece of what we deliver to employers. So we started to look at some of the stats which are here, but essentially the short version here is that when you engage employees and create reward frameworks or recognition frameworks, you have happier employees that are more productive, they're more likely to stay around, and it just creates this beautiful outcome. It's like a win-win outcome. Specifically for younger employees as well, that was something that highlighted in the stats that we had pulled up. And then we look at translating that to member engagement. So from employee engagement through to member engagement, and thinking about, okay, well, these frameworks work. How do we proactively retain and engage members through applying a very similar thinking? How might we leverage a digital first approach to scale and growth? These are the comments that we made earlier, and ultimately have happier, more engaged members who enjoy more value from their fund. And they're more likely to retain their account, or from an employee perspective, they're more likely to stay with their employer. So that's sort of the where we're thinking. And as part of that, what we wanted to do next was just talk about reward and recognition programs in a little bit more detail. They're so different, and there's so many different ways that you can apply it. But one way that Employment Hero does it is through our program, which we call Hero Dollars. Stephen, maybe I can ask you to introduce Hero Dollars a little bit more and how it's used as a reward and recognition program.
Yeah, so Hero Dollars is a program we've had since around 2018. So how it works essentially is employers can purchase Hero Dollars through our platform and then distribute these out to their employees for a number of events. So for example, if an employee has done or met the company value, you can assign Hero Dollars for that. And if they get nominated, they'll receive that as a recognition for meeting company values. We have other events such as you've reached your work anniversary, or you've hit a particular milestone like your birthday. And we can tie a nominal value to be distributed out to employees. Employees are able to spend this on our platform. As mentioned earlier, we have an employee benefits program. So for example, they can go buy gift cards with it. They can purchase headphones with it using our store. But the whole idea is that you're building the habits of rewarding people and recognizing them, and allowing people to spend the value. We've seen, some stats there. We've had about 3.6 million Hero Dollars distributed since we've launched. It keeps growing as well, and we'll highlight that this is growing faster than the employee growth rate that we've got on our platform. So about 20% compounded monthly growth rate of employees actually using Hero Dollars. And then you've got roughly 15% of organizations using Hero Dollars on the platform, growing every single month. So yeah, we're not even getting started. There's so much work I'm actually doing in this space right now. But I guess it goes to show we know a thing or two about reward and recognition.
Yeah. And that's a huge part of I know what you're focusing on, Stephen. So congratulations on that adoption. So that's great. So I guess the crux of today, what does that mean? Like, I'm working at a superannuation fund and I'm looking at reward and recognition programs. What does this mean for me? How might this apply to me as a super fund employee?
Yeah, I mean, just coming back to the three root problems we were speaking about earlier. So acquisition, increasing member balances, and retention. I just think there are a number of ways that if super funds were to mimic what employers were doing on our platform, you could actually drive those outcomes. So for example, if a super fund really cared about retention, could you award a whole bunch of loyalty points to that particular user when they reach a year or 2 years or 5 years even for being with that super fund? if a fund really cared about increasing member balances, as an example, should you award again this token to members when they set up a salary sacrifice arrangement? We know that that is a bit of a hurdle for a lot of people. So yeah, I just think it's a really interesting way to tackle the problem. And we're really just drawing on parallels of, we've seen funds in the market right now use this successfully, but then also how do you blend this with employee engagement? So yeah, I just think it's a really interesting space.
Sure, yeah. So the way I'd be thinking about this as well, if I was working at a superannuation fund, you've got your corporate strategy for the year ahead, is having a think about how you might deliver that corporate strategy through a program like this to incentivize those behaviors that you're looking to have increased in the in the fund. And like a real basic, I was just thinking about this as you were talking, Stephen, but let's say, for instance, as a fund, we've got this pain point or this problem where we don't know that we've got the correct details on all of our members. We're worried that we've got old email addresses or old mailing addresses, as an example. As a super fund, you might choose to distribute points or hero dollars in this example and run a campaign where for members who do validate that their contact details are correct or provide their most recent contact details to the fund, that would be a trigger to create that hero dollars or that outcome. Have to believe that because there's a reward component to that the engagement that you would achieve as a result of that would be higher than if you didn't have it. One of the lovely things as well about being a tech first business is everything is transparent and trackable, right? So you'll be able to translate in terms of your investment in a reward and recognition program, which members have engaged with that campaign, what the outcome to the fund would be, what the cost was as well for launching the program, and be able to clearly assess whether or not that was a success or not, and how to improve it in the future. So really easy to translate campaigns like this into outcomes for the fund. So here, we just wanted to think about a couple of different examples of how this might work in practice. And we actually took from the employee reward and recognition some of the ways that it's being delivered and repurposed it to superannuation members. So you've got employee recognition, right? That's huge. So let's talk about member recognition, providing members with a thank you at key milestones. For instance, when they hit their work anniversary at Employment Hero, we were rewarded with a beautiful gift from Employment Hero. We get hero dollars. As a super fund, you could do the same thing. You could reward your members when they hit their anniversary, as an example. I know of a provider, as an example, they actually reduce their fees every year that you're with the fund. That's a way of incentivizing retention. This is another way to incentivize retention. Recognition of work practices or member practices. So as an example, when members provide valuable piece of feedback or suggested way to improve the service, that would be huge. Like, I know for me, if we get a question from an organization using Employment Hero, or perhaps a frustration, or if a user is reaching out saying, guys, I've got this problem, this thing doesn't make sense, or it's frustrating to use, they get a thank you from us straight away. How else do you know? You can build something, behind a desktop sitting in your office, but until you actually get feedback from the real world, that's the best way to understand if something's working. And for me as a super fund, if I've got very engaged members who are pushing me to improve the product through frustrations and they're voicing that with me, I think there's an opportunity to reward them and say thank you. Recognition of dedication to work or retirement in this instance. So displaying examples of favorable engagement behaviors. So if you see a member that's completed a rollover, or they've confirmed their insurance choice, or something that means as a member they've taken initiative and taken action, which all things being equal is going to improve their financial position, then as a fund you can go, guys, well done. Like, we recognize that there's some friction here, but you've taken the effort, you've taken the time, congratulations, and good on you, and here's a thank you for you looking after yourself, basically. Recognition of progress made. So again, we track OKRs and Employment Hero, progress towards our objectives, but for super funds, for a lot of providers, you have retirement calculators as an example. So flip that around and say, okay, well, if you've just hit 50% of your retirement objective, 75%, or if you've done something that means you've 10x'd, or the members 10x their way to retirement, then say, guys, fantastic. Like, we see that, we recognize that, and good on you. Like that's great behaviors. recognition of results of the end product. Look, a very simple one would be if somebody went from transition from super to pension phase, as an example, they've hit a key milestone, then that's a huge event, and what a beautiful opportunity to say, hey, well done and good luck on the next stage of your life. Very finally, recognizing members who embody company values, members who align with the fund's mission or are proactive in managing their super. So again, I think this is a case of having a think about your vision, your mission, your purpose as a superannuation fund. Often there are key themes or key items that separate you from your competitors or from other providers. Then challenge yourself, what key activities demonstrate those values or that purpose? And for the members who display that, how do you turn that around and say thank you at those points in time? Yeah, so just a couple of examples that Stephen and I were thinking about.
That last one there's my favorite one. I know there's talk about trends. You know, there's a trend to get more green, more ESG friendly. So yeah, again, like how can you kind of challenge yourself if you see your members displaying those particular patterns or behaviors? How can you reward them? So yeah, I just think there's a lot of interesting things you can do in this space.
It's huge. And I think that's part of today. It's like, this is a framework that could apply based on what's important to you as a fund. You know, these are just examples to think about and get the thinking happening. A couple of little mock-ups. We love mock-ups at Employment Hero to see how it might fit together. These aren't compliance approved. These are just examples. So please do treat them as such. But here's an example where a super fund has used hero dollars and a little pop-ups going, hey, congratulations, you've hit your anniversary with the super duper fund. Congratulations. Here's some hero dollars, a couple of different examples there. An example of making an individual aware of the perks that are available to them, or making them aware that these benefits are available. And because not a lot of funds are offering these programs, it's a real great way to differentiate yourself. Now, we're a digital employment platform, so the question is, why wouldn't we do it ourselves? Why would we look at the likes of a strategic partner like Employment Hero? I think the reason for that is because as a digital employment platform, your members are engaging on our platform every single day already because they need to as a function of work. So our monthly active user rates, our daily active user rates, excuse me, broadly reflect almost like social media level stats of engagement. So it's an opportunity to engage your members at contextual points on platforms that they already use. And that's a key point in difference, and something that is kind of a key value that we have for delivering our partnerships to super funds, is how do we create a new on-ramp, a new channel for you to deliver engagement to your members. So breaking that down a little bit further, Stephen, I might ask you to walk us through this guy.
Yeah, we just really were thinking about what is the customer journey for members as they go through employment. So you think about the typical customer journey. So as an applicant, I might be looking for a job. Hopefully I receive an offer. I might onboard to the employer at that point in time, or then provide my superannuation details. Hopefully I would set up a salary sacrifice arrangement. Then payday comes around, I would receive my pay. So there'd be some more money going to the super fund at that point. I may decide to make a voluntary post-tax contribution, and I would reach particular milestones. So the blue is where we kind of laid out some of these examples within that customer journey. So for example, you've got a job, you've onboarded, and you're now providing your superannuation details. As a fund, if I really cared about acquisition or retention, I might actually decide to offer a value of hero dollars to that particular user. As a fund, if I really cared about increasing average member balances, I might award people for setting up a salary sacrifice arrangement. Likewise, if I cared about member balances, if they make a post-tax contribution, I might have some sort of scaling award depending on how much they actually put into the fund at that point. And then you can see that example play out. If I really care about retention, let's say the 1 year milestone, 2 year milestone, 5 year milestone, 10 year milestone with that particular fund, I may decide to award hero dollars at that point as well. What we got in orange here is how we think this could actually play out with the broader offerings that we've got. I won't go into these in too much detail today, as it's not really the focus. But please reach out to Ray, who is the expert in this and is speaking with a lot of funds with existing products. But we've actually got a new branding solution that we've got in the candidate space. So how can we actually present funds really early in that employment life cycle to really drive awareness? And then as people actually onboard to the employer, if you are a new member, we help funds actually join new funds at that point. Or if you really care about retention at that point, we have this existing member product. So if we recognize that you are with a particular superannuation fund, we actually prompt you to rejoin that fund as you join your new employer. You kind of see this all play out, and yeah, we've just got this holistic solution, I think, that works throughout that whole employment life cycle to really drive those outcomes we were talking about at the start, which were acquisition, increasing member balances, and retention. So yeah, just really thinking through the entire customer journey.
Brilliant. Thank you, Stephen. Moving right along in terms of how we help and what's next. So to Stephen's point, we do have a number of different ways that we do structure our kind of partnerships. I suppose we think of them as almost modules. That branding piece is enormous. We know there's a lot of funds that are really keen on increasing their brand presence with their members. Certainly loyalty is huge. Finding lost super and consolidation is a big initiative. I know I think it's over 20% of people have more than one superannuation account. So how do we as an industry help reduce that down? Attracting new members, retaining existing members, and engaging members on those key points. All different sort of modules that we have in practice. But as a starting point, I think the ask is do reach out with any questions that you've got. I'd be delighted to learn more about you as a fund and what you're looking to strive towards as a fund and what your objectives are. And then we can kind of turn that around and say, okay, well, based on what's important to you, this is how we believe we can help. All of this is underpinned by a framework, I suppose, or a part of the industry, which we're calling embedded superannuation. And what that means is embedding superannuation on different platforms, i.e. digital employment platforms, at points that make sense contextually on platforms that individuals are already using. So what that means is a superannuation fund is you will have different journeys or different engagement prompts for your members. How can you actually uplift those and embed those into platforms that your members are already using to increase the likelihood that your member is going to engage in that value generating activity? We've taken that thinking from the growth that we've seen in embedded finance. So if you think about traditional banking and then the transformation of embedded finance, it's transformed how members or how customers engage with financial products. We believe superannuation is next. And because the individual is the same person, I think the call out here is to say, if I'm as an individual person, I'm already engaging in embedded finance through other platforms because the traditional banking has started to look at that. I'm not at the moment getting that embedded experience from my superannuation fund. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there, and it might be one of the root causes why we're seeing lower engagement in super. How do we solve that? We can solve that through a digital employment platform that delivers these services throughout the life cycle. So yeah, we're going to be releasing a white paper at the end of the month as part of signing up for today. And again, thank you very much for coming. We'll certainly make sure you receive a link to that. Have a read through it. It's a little bit greenfields and new thinking, but really exciting. Certainly something we think can take the industry to the next stage into the future. So with that, reach out, let us know any questions, any thoughts, any challenges. We love it all and we'd love to speak to you. With that, I might open it up to the floor to see if there are any questions from those who had or who are in attendance. We finished up a little earlier than expected, but that's okay. Reach out with any questions in the chat. Stephen and I will stay on for another minute or two just to see if there's anything that comes through. If you're not comfortable, if you'd like to reach out directly, respond to the email that you'll get after today with the recording. You'll get the slides and you'll see everything there. Reach out to us directly and we can arrange a one-on-one chat to answer those questions that you might have. With that, Stephen, as we do look to close, are there any comments or questions you'd like to raise before we wrap?
No, this was real fun, and I'm sure we'll be doing another one soon. As Ray sort of touched on right at the start, this is just us thinking about, what is possible. So yeah, really open to co-collaborating with funds on potential solutions as well. Yeah, we're happy to jump in a room, jump in a whiteboard, and basically go through the same exercise that Ray and I did to come up with solutions to particular problems. So hopefully keep your eyes peeled for what hopefully is another interesting topic.
Yeah, for sure. You've raised a really good point, and something I did forget to mention at the start. We have an ask for those that do work for super funds. So we'd be delighted to host a workshop at your place or at our place, whatever works. Stephen and I would come in. We'd really like to challenge ourselves on this framework. We'd very keen to understand, again, your corporate strategy, what you're looking to achieve over the next year, and how a reward and recognition program might accelerate that as an outcome. Our commitment then would basically be to almost reverse engineer or see how we might be able to structure this as a product almost, or as a service that we could then make available to you and run as a pilot. That's something that we're certainly looking at over the next month or two for funds who are open to these exploratory conversations to challenge ourselves collectively. And then that way we can go through the compliance process and the commercial process and make sure that we're ticking off all of the boxes that we need to get a really exciting new pilot off the ground. But with that, guys, really appreciate it. It's Thursday morning, so no doubt we've got one eye on the weekend, and you've been very generous with your time. This recording will be made available, so let me know if there are any questions. But otherwise, thank you so much. We really do appreciate it, and we certainly do hope to hear from you in the future. Thank you.